Sports for Real with Coach Hall. The NCAA tournament men's version kicked off the full version last night, and as expected, we had some pretty great action. And none more thrilling and exciting as the upsets that we saw, including number 3 Kentucky in the South going down to Oakland University. That's out of Michigan, not California. And that's ironic to me because if you saw the video clip of Hampered's press conference, he's bigging up, or he called it a humble brag. He's bragging on the virtues of attending the University of Kentucky, and all the graduates or the guys that played for him are making all these billions of dollars over this last few years in the NBA. And when you come to Kentucky, you're going to get a great education. You're going to learn how to play as a team, and so on and so forth. But none of that helped that team last night, also full of great athletes, but they're young, and they don't have the experience of a team like the University of Oakland, and they got knocked off. Most people view that as an upset, but the way that the University of Oakland was carrying on, they expected to win, and that's a great thing. It's called leading up to parity, because teams like Kentucky aren't supposed to lose to universities like Oakland. But that is also a byproduct of the balancing of the NCAA field across the field because of NIL. Again, I can go to Kentucky, I can win, and I can be around all these great players, but at the same time, I may not play. And these guys nowadays, they want to play. And if I can play and go to a lesser university and get paid, hey, let's go over here. And, there's a whole lot better environment over there for guys who just want to be on the court trying to get better so they can advance and move on to the next level so they can compete against guys like the University of Kentucky later on down the line. But you got a collection of guys like yourself who can band together and beat the University of Kentucky, just like what we saw last night. But the focus of today's talk is not necessarily University of Kentucky. It's the NCAA tournament and some of the people who have been abused by the NCAA tournament. You saw in the first 4 the other night, the University of Virginia was thumped by Colorado State, who Colorado State was turning around and got beat by Texas last night. But the point is that this is not the first time that you've seen the University of Virginia stumble. And because of the way that they play and the way that they lost, analysts like Stephen A. Smith comes out and said he would fire a guy like Bennett because of what's been taking place there. And I wouldn't necessarily say he deserves to be fired, but it does deserve a closer look at what's going on. If you go back 5-6 years, in 2018, the University of Virginia under Bennett was the number 1 seed in the tournament. Up to that point, no number 1 seed had ever been knocked off by a 16th seed. And I think the reasoning for that is because of how they do the seeding. If those bubble teams were truly treated as bubble teams, then you would have more opportunities as a true 16 seed to beat a number 1 seed. But they don't do it like that. So in comes University of Maryland, Baltimore County. They drew number 1 seed Virginia, and they beat them. They didn't just get by them on a buzzer beater. They beat them by like 19 points. So that was a pretty thorough whipping that they put on Virginia. The same kind of way that they lost to Colorado State the other night. But to Bennett's credit, he did bounce back, and they won the national championship in 2019. But since then, they have not advanced past the first round. And that is puzzling with the talent that they put together at the University of Virginia. But when I think about Tony Bennett, it puts me in the mind of when I first started watching college basketball, or at a young age started to realize what was going on in the world. And that's when DePaul was the darling of the NCAA, and they had these high rankings, but unfortunately for them, they couldn't advance. Now, when I say they couldn't advance, not saying that DePaul never advanced. They actually had a pretty good run in the tournament over the years. Matter of fact, in 1979, they lost to Larry Bird in Indiana State to set up the championship game between Bird and Magic in '79, Michigan State, Indiana State. Again, Indiana State beat DePaul by a bucket to move to the championship game. Since then, DePaul was expected, under Hall of Fame coach Ray Meyer, was expected to win a national championship. Well, in the 1980 tournament, they had the number 1 seed, and they got beat by UCLA. And if you recall, UCLA went on to lose the national championship game to Dr. Griffith, Dr. Duncanstein, Mr. Griffith, Darryl Griffith. Louisville beat them by 5 points in Indianapolis. Then in '81, another great DePaul team, they got beat because they had buys back then. They got beat in the first game they played in the second round by St. Joseph's. And that would be equivalent to Maryland, Baltimore County beating Virginia back in 2018. That team for DePaul was destined to be a national champion. They did lose one game and by 1 point, and then they lost that NCAA tournament game by another point. So if you remember anything about that game, DePaul had the lead. All they had to do was ice it at the free throw line, but they couldn't hit the free throw line. They seemed to just panic and get tight, and the world closed in on them, and they ended up losing. Come back the next year, same kind of thing. Number 1 seed, they get bounced from the tournament. So the thing that you're seeing with Tony Bennett has happened before with another great coach. Just like Ray Meyer, Bennett has won 3 times as much as he's lost. But on the big stage is what people remember. And even though Ray Meyer had that great Hall of Fame career, at the end, those failures in the tournament when they were highly ranked, that's what people remember. And this is the thing that Tony Bennett is facing now. You have all these great teams, but nobody's going to remember how great you are if you can't get past these early round games. And John Calipari said something very similar last night when he was talking about his Kentucky team, about all the good stuff they've done during the year, but nobody's going to remember that because they got upset by Oakland in the first round. So it's a tough pill to swallow, but when you look at Tony Bennett, you got to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He is a good coach. At some point, he's going to get past the first round, but if he has 1 or 2 more stumbles at the University of Virginia where they don't advance, then administration like Stephen A. Smith may have to look at moving on into a different direction. Is that really warranted? No, because they are winning. They are achieving most of the goals that they want to get. Even if they don't win a national championship, the program has been successful. But the embarrassment is just a little bit too much for a lot of administrators to take. So when you look at Bennett, don't forget what happened with Ray Meyer. Even though he didn't never win that NCAA tournament, he was a Hall of Fame coach, and he's still celebrated, and nobody's really, unless people like myself bring it up, nobody's really talking about the futility at the end. It's only the now, but the overallness of your career is going to be evaluated as a whole, not just what you did in any 1 or 2 tournaments. So that's just my connection to the past and the future with Tony Bennett and Hall of Fame coach Ray Meyer. So looking forward to more great games today. I know the big upset people were calling for Samford to beat Kansas. I could never see that happening, and I don't care if Kansas lost 5 or 6 athletes to injury for the end of the tournament. Samford is a team they should never lose to, and I don't expect that to happen anytime soon. So anyway, this has been Sports for Real. We're out.